Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Subscribing to My Podcast. Because I have a new guest featured every week, it makes it very difficult to maintain consistent viewership. So if there's one thing that you can do to support me or the guest featured on the show, it's by interacting with my channel in every way that you can. You can always decide to unsubscribe later if you decide that you hate me or my show. With that plugging aside, enjoy my discussion with John Haila. Has been the mayor of Ames since 2018 and has been running a lot of the operations that happen in Ames, which is the city that houses Iowa State University, the college that I go to right now. I got in connection with him via our student government, and they sent a representative down there to talk to him and then get this connection building. So I'm really excited to hear about what goes into being mayor and then a lot of the motivations that go behind the decisions and stuff that are happening behind the scenes and on the front of the scenes. But John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and then tell some of the viewers some important things that they should know about you.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. It's always a pleasure to connect with individuals through a variety of different mediums, and I have to confess that podcasting is something that I'm not necessarily used to, but looking forward to spend some time with you here. Yeah, I have been mayor since January 2nd of 2018, so I'm in my second term, which expires at the end of this year, and I just earlier this week announced that I'm going to be seeking a third term. The election will be happening in November, and if I'm found to be supported by the voters, would take office or continue in office for another 4 years after that. So a little bit about me. I actually am a graduate of Iowa State. I graduated in 1976, so a long time ago for probably many listeners. Majored in architecture and met my wife, future wife here. And when we got married, we ended up living in Boone, the town next door, because I had a job in Des Moines, she had a job in Boone. We had one vehicle, and so I was commuting, and it was just better to have her be able to walk to and from. But we kept our feet, and I was actually we were actively involved in a faith community here in Ames. And so we spent a lot of time in Ames, still had a lot of friends here, so we kind of had our feet in both communities. Fast forward, we ended up having 2 boys, and both also attended Iowa State, and they both ended up living here in the community. But we were still involved with the faith community here, as well as had a number of employees. I started working for a company in 1977 in Boone, and then I was given the opportunity to buy the company, actually buy the files and rights to call on clients out in 1986 and started my own company, architecture and engineering. And grew the company, and we needed more staff and also had a vision for being more engaged in a community where I was actively involved in our faith community. Moved our company over here in 2009, and then we moved over in 2011 and sold the company in 2016 and then consulted with them for a couple of years. Got my road or path to becoming an elected official is in my profession as a design professional. I spent a lot of time in front of city councils, school boards, county boards, and facilitated well north of 2,000 meetings through that time. But I thoroughly enjoy representing my clients and interacting with them, building relationships, the process of construction. And when we came to Ames, we actually relocated the firm in Campus Town to start with. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's where the 2320 building is at. I forget if it's what it's called. It's the block or whatever. That's where it was a 2-story building. We were on the second floor, had a beautiful view of Lake Laverne and the Campanile, and all of our staff members were Iowa State graduates, so we kind of just loved being right across the street from campus. And I got involved with helping reinvigorate Campus Town Action Association, became president of that organization for a few years, and really wanted to kind of help build up the Campus Town area, kind of helped our community, help shape a little bit how the Kingland building looked. They had a variety of different ideas. We were not the architects. An architect was out of northern Iowa, but And during that time, met the then mayor, Ann Campbell, and because of my involvement in Campus Town, she asked if I'd be considering being appointed to the Transit Board, which oversees SciRide. And so after thinking about it, I said, sure. SciRide has 6 members. There's a mayoral appointed public individual, a city council member, the vice president of business and finance has not been changed to the university attorney, and then city manager, and then 2 representatives from student government. And I joke I had the best seat in town. I mean, because we had our city manager, Steve Shanker, on one side of the table, and then the previous vice president of business and finance, Warren Madden, and they were just engaged in conversation, representing their constituents. Warren, students of Iowa State and the university, and Steve, the citizens, and they both wanted the best for their constituents. And there's times that the conversation would get pretty animated, but you could tell that there was a deep respect, and it was amazing. Sometimes after the meeting, they get up and Steve put his arm around Warren's shoulders. Okay, we got to talk about something else that's going on, And you could just tell that there was really this unique relationship that wanted the best for the community of Ames. Certainly working with students was invigorating, and meeting a city council person, talking to them. And while I was on Campus Town Action Association, went before the council, advocated for some funding to have a part-time, then full-time director. Very impressed with the council, and thought, I would really enjoy representing people in the community like I represented clients as an architect and engineer. So anyway, fast forward, I found out that the Mayor Campbell was going to retire, and through actually talking to 70 different people in the community, and just said, I'm thinking about, running for mayor. I was thinking about running for council, but it just seemed that the mayor seemed to be a better fit because of where I was coming from, my role, my background, and 40 years of experience in the profession, 30 years running my own company. And went ahead and decided to run, and it was, I'll be honest, it was almost a full-time job, and then some. Going out meeting, I think I counted over 1,500 doors, knocked on that. Many, personal appearances, lots of learning, listening, and engagement. And there was someone else that was also running, and ended up being successful, and have really, it's different than being in business, but it's incredibly rewarding, and it can also be incredibly frustrating. But maybe we'll get to those points, a little later in the conversation. But and so my wife and I live here, and then we have, like I said, both our boys live here with their wives, and each one has 4 kids. So we have 8 grandkids. 4 live 3 blocks from us, and the other 4 and their parents live about 7-8 minutes away from us in the northwest part of Ames. So we are really very fortunate, and we have just a great community. And I have to say, I never had envisioned when I was attended Iowa State that someday I would actually have the honor of serving the community, as its highest elected official, as mayor. But I count it as an honor and a privilege, and it's something that obviously I thoroughly enjoy from a standpoint of wanting to continue on into a 3rd term.
Yeah, and it's really cool to have you outline each step, like each motivation as to why you transitioned from working in transit, and then you're in between these 2 people. Now you want to work with the people, and then now you get to do that. I think one of the things that people are really interested in is, like, what do you actually do as mayor? Like, a lot of people have this idea of, like, you're the mayor, you're the representative of Ames, right? But I'm very interested on, like, what is your day-to-day operation, and then what is the macro things that you're responsible for? Because you said that you said before this that it's kind of a part-time position, so you're doing other work. Sometimes it feels full, sometimes it feels like less. So I guess just walk me through I guess, a day-to-day and then maybe macro-level mayor duties?
Well, that's a complex question, and I'll seek to try and maybe distill it down. First of all, the amount of time commitment kind of varies from season to season. Where right now, I would call it like in our harvest season. This is really the busiest time of year for us. It starts shortly after New Year's, and then it'll go through probably late into March or into April. So right now, I'm running at probably at least 40 hours a week. In terms of being involved with a variety of activities, which I'll outline in a few minutes. But probably the most visible one is the mayor acts as, in a sense, the CEO. Now that should be clearly understood. This is not someone walking in just telling everyone what to do. And just maybe back up, Ames operates under what they call a council, city mayor form of operation or government. City council is a policy-making body. There's 6 council members and a mayor. We also function under what they call a weak mayor system. The mayor does not vote. The only time I can vote is to break a tie on a motion. An emotion essentially gives direction or action to staff to pursue, to do something. But anytime there's a resolution, which primarily is for purchasing property, paying bills, taking actions that require a formal action of the council, I cannot vote on that, and I cannot vote on adopting ordinances, city laws, regulations. City council hires 2 people. They hire a city manager and a city attorney. And the city manager is vested with the responsibility of running the entire city operation. So the city manager hires department heads. So that would include Parks and Recreation, Public Works, the head of SIRIDE, water treatment, water plant, power plant. So there's a whole litany, or there's a whole group of individuals that he hires, and then he vests in them, the department heads, they hire their staff, but he holds them accountable. So council, essentially, is like a giant tree that council holds the city manager responsible and accountable. So when we have meetings, the mayor runs the meeting, has the ability to help set the agenda. That's the most visible because that's when we have at least 2 to 3 council meetings a month or more. That's my role. I will entertain, listen to the conversation. I may certainly participate in it, offering opinions. Then call for the motion, and then basically guiding it, making sure that it's going smoothly. And part of those meetings, there'll be maybe proclamations where we're celebrating certain events, calling attention to mental health issues. It's a wide range of events or celebrations that have a community-wide impact. We're not going to do something which is specific to one particular individual or a unique group. So that alone, getting ready for those meetings, we'll get packets on Friday afternoon at 5. Actually, we don't get them. We go down and download them, like you could go down and download them too at the same time. We don't get them any earlier. And the packets may vary from 200 to 750 pages long. And so council members and the mayor are expected to read through those packets. Now, full disclosure, sometimes when there are 700 pages, it may have a contract from the Federal Aviation Authority for our airport that may be 100 pages long, and you're not going to read that because you know they're not going to change it.
Yeah, right.
So that adds to the bulk. But by and large, I'd say it's probably between 200 and 300 pages that you have to go through, become familiar with the materials. And that's over a weekend and a Monday in preparation for a Tuesday meeting. So that's probably the most visible administratively working together with council. I would say that, for example, today I started out responding to emails that were follow-up from a council meeting from a couple of days ago. Then went out to speak to a Leadership Ames group that was touring different amenities that exist in our community. Then met with someone at the mayor's office for a discussion on some topics regarding local city issues. Talked to an assistant city manager about an upcoming item that's going to be on council next Tuesday night, and weighing in on some pros and cons. Coming here, enjoying, chatting. I'll bring greetings to many events, such as everything from Veterans Day to Martin Luther King Day, NAACP Freedom Fund Banquet is next week. There's a lot of public appearances where I'm asked to bring greetings on behalf of the Ames community. And then we'll have State of the City, State of the Community events where we'll go ahead and have individuals from different sectors of the city that will weigh in. Certainly we have great connections and relationships with the county, with Iowa State University, Ames School District. So on at least a quarterly basis with Dr. Winterstein and some of her staff, the city manager and I meet with her, school superintendent and some school board members we meet, and just talk about what things are going on in the community, issues that might be of concern. And then in the interim, there's also conversations and dialogue. What I had not anticipated was the amount of time I would required is going down to the State House and representing the city of Ames' interests on a number of pieces of legislation that could either adversely or positively affect city operations. We are subject to state law. That's kind of like a, no-brainer on that one. But they certainly come in, and can control either how much money, what kind of tax levy can we apply to property in order to collect, revenue, to stormwater, to building codes. They're even talking about issues surrounding libraries. And Ames, Iowa has a home rule ordinance that actually celebrated 50 years, whereas it says that the cities have the right to act autonomously from the state, but for legislation that's passed that supersedes local, control. And so for years, that has been respected by legislature, and they don't really try and pass onerous laws that really control or affect, the cities. That has been changing in the last few years, and so I would say in January through April, I'm on weekly Zoom calls on two different legislative policy committee groups talking about issues that are forthcoming. Spend time down at the State House talking, or emails or phone calls or whatever. We do get a significant number of emails from constituents, so following up, seeking to either refer to staff to respond to those or respond to them one-on-one meetings or group meetings with entities in the community that want to go ahead and interact around issues that are significant to them. I do lead the council, and going forward this year and into the coming years, on the basis I'm reelected, is becoming even more strategic and focused in terms of vision and leading the council. And we have an outstanding council. They don't always agree, but that's fine. That's expected. But they work well together, and there is civility, and there is certainly a passion to do what's best for all residents, including students. And incidentally, on council, we have one student ex officio council member that's appointed by student government. And we thoroughly enjoy having that representative there to bring the student's voice. And it takes a lot of time because they're expected to at least catch the highlights in the reports. And there's times where I may call on, currently it's Emily Boland, I call on her and ask her, what her thoughts are, and what would the student's perspective be, because we want that to be considered. So that's just some of the things that I do. It is a very you don't do this to make money. I mean, the mayor's salary is $11,000 a year, and it's you set your own hours. But I believe that I knew going into it was not I wasn't doing it for the income. I was doing it because of my passion to represent the Ames community. But there's times where it's well over 40 hours a week, and there's some long, night meetings, and sometimes they're back to back to back. But then there's some times during the year where it may be shorter, or be less hours. For example, in the summertime, it may be a little less time intensive because people either being on vacation, legislature is no longer in session, and for example, right now we just are finishing up the budget, and so last week we had council meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night, back to back to back. The previous week we had a meeting on Friday afternoon. So this is really probably the most intense meeting-wise. And then serving on some other boards and groups that are Ames Main Street. So there's just a lot of, and it is really enjoyable because you get to really understand the complexity and the passion and where we could be going as a community. And there's exciting projects that are being considered. But there's also important business that residents are concerned about, and so we need to talk about those also.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of it is kind of culminating communication from you're really just supposed to understand everything that is happening in the city and as much as you can. I kind of want help getting clued in on what some of these conversations look like. So is there a way you could kind of walk me through maybe a recent conversation that was a bit more lively, that was a bit more debated, or a conversation that really took some mental energy, or any recent things that are happening? I know that you were talking about state ordinances, and there's a lot of like new DEI restructuring that's happening from the state ordinances. Obviously, as a university, that affects us a lot.
Correct.
But you don't have to use that example. But what conversations are happening within the city that you feel like are active and that you remember pretty well?
Well, the most recent one that was very active and well attended in the council meeting would be north of the downtown area is what the area that's referred to as Old Town. It has more historic houses, and we have a growing challenge with people who are homeless or unhoused, and there are some services provided in the Old Town area, and there was a organization that owned a house on the south end of that area, and they purchased a second house to provide services on that. What they do is it's not a shelter. This house will allow those who are homeless to come and take a shower, do laundry, get lunch. I think their hours are from 10 until 4. And so what became lively was the request was to allow this additional house to be purchased or to operate. And council was informed that the current house that's being used will be changed into essentially a place for those who volunteer at this home would be residing, and then this new home that they purchased would replace the one that they currently have to provide those services, gathering. And initially, when council was considering it, it would mean that anywhere in that whole downtown area, you could have a additional service provider or providers be located, and there was a significant pushback from residents saying, "Hey, it's really affecting property values, affecting quality of life. We're very concerned about the impact it's going to have on our neighborhoods." And so, and there was, I'd say we probably almost had the council chambers full. And there was a very robust conversation, and one council member in particular, it was very, very difficult for this individual because there was they felt conflicted, that they saw that there was a value to this entity, what they were trying to accomplish, but they also understood what the challenges and claims were from the individuals that were offering public comment. So there was a lot of conversation, dialogue. We proposed limiting it, gave several options of how to restrict an area where these could be located. Part of my contribution to the conversation was suggesting another alternative that would be even more restrictive, but that would allow this one house to take over or to exist. And so it was lots of emails, lots of conversation during council meeting. I would say emotion, not in a negative sense, but very impassionate pleas. And then the last meeting before when a decision was made which way to go forward, I think we had 14 or 15 people who had signed up to offer public comment, and I asked people to limit it to no more than 3 minutes, because it's amazing when you ask someone. I had one time where I asked people to limit it to 2 minutes because we had a huge group of people who wanted to speak. People, when they say they only have 2 minutes, really get their message out in a very succinct way, and everyone respected that. And so we went back and forth. It was equally divided. We had 7 people that were in favor of what was being proposed, 7 people opposed. And one of the real challenges is that sometimes people feel like council isn't really listening, or I'm not really listening. Well, we are listening, and we do hear what's being said. But as an elected official, our responsibility is to look at the overall, what is best for the overall community, and take all residents' needs and concerns and issues to heart and to mind. And I know that every council member thought long and hard, and it wasn't just like during the council meeting. There was many conversations between council meetings, and I met with a couple and even did a walking tour, to be better understand what all was going on. In the end, I would say the majority of the votes are typically 6-0. This one ended up being 4-2 in favor of allowing this limited area to be added where you could have social service providers could be located, but it was only limited to one additional social service provider. But that conversation, while the ordinance has passed, has been signed, and is going into effect, there's still ongoing dialogue with that neighborhood regarding concerns surrounding what they experienced from a homeless standpoint, homeless individuals, and their perception and belief that there's some declining safety issues. And so we're going to continue the conversation and dialogue with them. So you have to really be thinking, digging deep, analyzing, being receptive to the feedback, and taking all that into account. So what I'm really, in the 7+ years I've been mayor, there's probably only been like maybe one time where I was close to gaveling someone as being out of order. But we're very fortunate in Ames that I believe that's part of what I bring or offer, even at how I interact with council members and how I interact with the public, is that we're here to accomplish city business. We're here to listen to public feedback, but it needs to be done in a civil, respectful way. If you're passionate about something, that's fine, But personal attacks, are towards council or staff, which I don't think has hardly ever happened. And there was once where I called a person as being that's going too far. It's not appropriate. But when you see some of the things that are going on, around the country and even sometimes down Des Moines, we just don't have that kind of engagement. And it's something that I think council needs a model of civility amongst themselves and how they respond and interact with our residents, whether it's from the dais, before or after the meeting one-on-one, meeting with groups, through email responses, all requires, to your point, it's a lot about communication, seeking to understand a very complex issue, and understanding that probably we will not please everybody. If we were pleasing everybody, we probably wouldn't be doing doing our job, because then you're essentially doing the whims of whatever people want. By and large, I think the council really does listen, and there's times I sat behind the dais knowing or anticipating that a person is going to vote one way, and they actually say, because of the public feedback that was received, I understand this and see it in a different light. I came in here voting. I was going to vote one way. I've changed my mind. I'm going to vote this way. So it shows that that council is listening, and considering. But because every issue truly is complex and there's lots of things going on in the background, we have to come prepared and understand what's going on and asking questions for clarification. A council meeting is not intended to educate the council on what's going on. It's there to conduct the business and come to a decision on policy and how to move something forward or to stop it.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting situation. You kind of alluded to what is best for the city and what is best for the people. I guess, how do you... Ames is a really interesting place because half of the population are students.
Correct.
And the other half
Yep.
is residents. And it's very interesting because the city is big, but the mayoral reach is similarly smaller, even though we are all residents of Ames. I guess when you're talking about the importance of the people, can you kind of describe to me what Ames is as a city, what these people are, what are the values, what specifically at the heart of Ames rattles around in your head when you're trying to make these decisions?
Sure. Yeah, that's an insightful question. Council has adopted 6 values, and I came unprepared to relate, but I know that they have to do. We review those and are included in some of our council action forms, packets, information. We value a diverse and welcoming community. We're looking for supporting people in terms of housing. We want this to be a fun, vibrant community, and underneath that there's additional tasks that we want to accomplish. So that's reviewed every 2 years, and then it's actually updated every 2 years. The values haven't changed for, I think, 4 years now, because really values are kind of ongoing, and those are what we're using as our standard for, okay, does this decision fit and support this particular value? As you get deeper into the the sum points of being goals under those values, those goals may change every 2 years, and then under the goals there are specific tasks we're trying to accomplish. Those are all public. That's what we're really striving to accomplish. So it's taking that broader council-adopted values, goals, and tasks, and then comparing that to what the requests are. And then it's going to come into also what are some of the judgments that are being made. Furthermore, council in the last 3 to 4 years has adopted a number of major plans. One is our comprehensive plan for the community. It's called Ames 2040 plan, which envisions what Ames might look like by the year 2040, how many more residents might be there, how are we going to accommodate that growth, what do we want the city to look like. We have a climate action plan that was accepted. We have the bike, walk, roll, which essentially is a mobility type of a plan that looks at how we get around besides vehicles. Walking, rolling would be rollerblading, biking, whatever. And then we also have a Lincoln Way corridor study, which was completed just before I took office. That contemplates about 5 or 6 different zones along Lincoln Way from the east side all the way to the west side. And then also a complete streets. And then we had a parking study for downtown. And then next Tuesday night, we're going to be considering Ames Main Street has gone through a visioning process, which the city of Ames will be championing, and will be receiving that on Tuesday night. And it really looks at what and where could the downtown area, what could it become in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This is not a master plan saying, okay, next year we're going to start tearing down this building or putting this up in this parking lot or whatever. It's more or less options for us to consider with some very high-level costs, and that will allow us to be talking about where could we go. And we're actually going to be initiating one for a campus town. We need to do something like that too, because campus town needs to be re-envisioned. It probably won't be quite as may not be quite as comprehensive as a downtown, because downtown is a bigger area. So you have our values, goals, and tasks. Then we have all these adopted plans. And then we have staff feedback and input, the interactions that we get from our constituents via email, conversations, meetings. All those get put into the hopper, and then it gets, I won't say spun around, basically influences the process. And then I think also there's going to be, what does the individual person who's been elected, we believe that people elect us to use our best judgment based on what we have publicized as being, from the reports to the values, just kind of an overall vision for the community to kind of come up with that. But the public input is really important to make sure we understand what the perspective. There's a lot of issues that come before council, and there's virtually no public input. And so council is left to, rely on staff expertise. For example, on transportation, we have an outstanding transportation engineer that looks at everything from, road design, speed limits, traffic control. As also under his wing is the airport. We have a housing and planning director. We have a building inspection department. We rely on those experts to give us advice and counsel and feedback, because that's their area of expertise. And so it's not that if staff says something, we're going to do it, but it certainly carries a lot of weight. Otherwise, we should get different staff, because you have to hire good people to arrive at great decisions.
Yeah, and it's it's really exciting. And I think a lot of the job, too, is even though your term might only be 4 years, to envision things that are happening in 15 and 20 years, which I think is really exciting. Are there any particularly digestible or decided and exciting things that are coming to Ames, or new projects that we can maybe see within the next 5 years that people, particularly students, should be excited about? Do you have any idea of what's coming up in the next 5 years, maybe?
Well, funny you should ask. There are a lot of them. Yes, I've shared with people. I believe the next 5 years in Ames will be significant years. First of all, we have a couple of projects that are underway. One is a new downtown plaza, just to the east side of City Hall. It's called Shanker Plaza, which is in honoring our city manager, who has continuously served the city of Ames for over 42 years as a city manager. I think he's he definitely is the longest continuously serving city manager in Iowa and potentially in the nation. A city manager's position, he serves at the pleasure of council, and the duration, the tenure of city managers is probably a decade or less. Because sometimes you have council members that come in and say, "Hey, we want somebody else or whatever," or they're at odds. But Steve Shanker has done an amazing job. So that'll be completed. We have the new indoor aquatic center on Lincoln Way, which is right across the street from the Iowa Department of Transportation. For those who may not know where that's at, where Grand intersects with Lincoln Way and goes north and goes under that train, the viaduct. It's just a couple blocks to the west. That's a really exciting project. One that has been long coming. We are looking or hoping that we're going to see a major redevelopment in the downtown area along Lincoln Way. It's known as the Link, which would be a hotel, housing, and some retail and some commercial. That is not a city-driven project. That is actually a developer-driven project. City may be willing to, use tax increment financing. In other words, increased amount of taxes on that property would be given back to the developer to pay for infrastructure and other things in order to make it more fiscally attainable. Something they were not involved with at all, but excited to watch, is Sci-Town. We really hope that becomes imminently successful because that'll be two things. One, it'll provide new venues and potentially housing and entertainment, but also the agreement that the city has with the Sci-Town to forego receiving any property taxes is that money that we would receive for property taxes is to go into a fund to help pay for renovations to C.Y. Stevens, Sheeman, anything which is non-athletic at the Iowa State Center. And the city of Ames immensely benefits from that. And the city of Ames has not put one penny into any of the Iowa State Center buildings. And we believe this is a time that we need to kind of come alongside and help. We're contemplating a number of projects. One is out on West Ontario Street, which is on the north side of town, northwest corner. City just bought, I think it's between 40 and 50 acres of land that is natural rolling areas. That's going to become a new park. It's the 40th park that we have in the city of Ames. We have everything from a small little pocket park, little plaza, that all the way up to this, to Ada Hayden up on the north side, which has got a beautiful, lake and a couple of miles of walking and biking trails. So that master planning is going to be started sometime this year. We need to replace an aging animal shelter, and that is actually going to be on. It's step one of that is on the council agenda for next Tuesday night. I believe that our community would really benefit from an indoor recreation complex that would have everything from basketball, soccer, walking track, pickleball options, badminton, volleyball, maybe an esports, or an area for moms for toddlers and young kids. Nevada just built a fantastic new complex. It's smaller than what we would need, but also needs to be flexible and adaptable. So it's not like you're going to have dedicated areas for all these. But there's conversations that are starting to ongo with that. And then we have 2 fire stations, one in Campus Town that needs to be relocated. Out of Campus Town, we're concerned about safety. And so in partnership, or actually thanks to Iowa State University Administration, we're looking at moving that to some Iowa State property on State Street, which is just there to the west. And then as we continue to grow north with residential, we need to have a 4th fire station, and we're looking for a creative solution to that. And they're actually looking at building a house that would have a big garage that would house a one engine or a one response vehicle up there. And then long term, when we can afford to build a fourth fire station, then that could be sold as a house. So, in addition, we have a power plant here in town that we need to actually eventually retire, and we're going to go to a brand new power plant which uses packaged boilers. When I say a boiler, I think of, in a building context, something which is fairly small and compact. These are 9-story tall, about 15-foot square racks of tubes that go up. It's way up there, filled with water. You burn a giant flame in the middle, and you turn it into steam to drive our generators. One of them is getting on its last legs, and then the generators are, one of them is from the 1960s. So that's important. And the last thing I'll just add, and I told you it'd be funny to ask, and there's a lot of things.
Exciting.
And actually, I'll come back to it. Anyway, and then the other thing is that we have the first in the nation resource recovery plant where we actually burn trash. We call it solid waste. It's a prettier name than trash. Mm-hmm. And 13 different communities haul their solid waste to Ames, and that has been goes through and they extract metals. We try and encourage people to recycle glass, in yellow bins at different, grocery stores around town. For many, many years, we haven't worried about cardboard boxes and combustibles because they just part of the fuel going in. Well, that was when we were burning coal. And prior to becoming mayor, we converted to natural gas. And the product of combustion of natural gas and plastic turns into a very caustic acid, and it's deteriorating the interior of the boilers. The coal, when it burned, the ash coated the pipes, protected them, and created its own insulating, or not insulating, but a protective layer. So when we change, and now we're burning natural gas, we're going to do a solid waste. So now we're going to go ahead and we're looking at creating a brand new plant where we'll have a giant recycling center, food composting, yard waste, and a large recycling area. We've gone from recycling 0 pounds of cardboard to last fiscal year, I believe it was, almost 250,000 pounds of cardboard. It's not being burned, and we have lots of room to grow. We have an agreement where our solid waste gets transported to Boone County landfill. We can't burn everything. There's wet stuff. There's certain things that we do have to haul over there. Boone County landfill is getting they're running out of space. They don't want our solid waste anymore. Long story short, we found a partner in Carroll. Yes, it's a long ways to go, but we're going to be backhauling their recyclables, combine them with ours to get a better market for that and encourage that. Electronic equipment, monitors, TVs, et cetera. And then we're going to essentially mothball or tear down the old resource recovery plant. We're not sure what we're going to do, but just the resource recovery plant to, we call it a transfer station, has to be done in 2 years. So that's going to be like being shot out of a shotgun. Power plant needs to start here pretty soon. And then the other projects already underway is the animal control, and I would like to see an indoor rec center being seriously considered. We have a lot of conversations to go, we'll get community input, but we need to get the ball rolling. So from an architectural and engineering standpoint, I have no vested interest, but I'm passionate about, these. And so when we had 50 years ago started the resource recovery plant, it was the first in the nation. To be to basically retiring that and going to something different to really try and be on the cutting edge of recycling, reclaiming, compacting, partnering with other entities. And that power plant has existed since about the 1900s. And so to have a whole brand new power plant, it's pretty exciting to think that we're actually going to be transitioning, those major resources that provide really important services, to our community. And we're putting $65 million into our wastewater treatment plant, which has a stellar record of not discharging a limited amount of nitrates and nitrites, into the water stream, phosphorus. And our water treatment plant will probably need to be expanded. So there are so many things going on that we're involved with, not to mention research park, increasing housing, and Iowa State University. So it's a very dynamic time, and it's one that we really want to get postured that when people are getting close to graduating, they're looking at how can we stay in Ames. And work from home makes a difference, and we want to attract more opportunities for people to consider to work and stay in Ames.
Well, that's a ton of exciting stuff, and then I and the 30,000 other students have one more thing we would like to add to that list of projects.
All right.
We are begging for a Raising Cane's in Ames. Now,
So how much are you getting paid for the ads?
for the Raising Cane's ad? I would pay Raising Cane's to allow this to allow them to.
Would you be surprised if I told you that you weren't the first person to mention this to me?
I would not be at all. Now, we only have time for maybe about one more question.
Sure.
And I want to keep it in relation to this for students and maybe even people, in Ames. How should they contact you to affect change, or what is the best way for people, to have a voice, to represent that voice, and to get the Raising Cane's in Ames?
First of all, I back up. I'm aware of the phenomenon of Raising Cane's, and your president and vice president have made it very clear. The city really isn't involved per se. Now, if I were asked by someone to write a letter to advocate on its behalf, I definitely, would. All right. So
I'm asking you to write a letter on our behalf.
It's my understanding that, well, first of all, I think Matt Campbell wants Raising Cane's to come also, because I think they also got out and retrieved food from, I think, Ankeny or someplace else. I believe that there actually is there's investigation going on by individuals in terms of how can that happen. I think, all joking aside, when companies look at where do they locate, like Chick-fil-A, Target, whatever, they look at number of people, number of cars that drive by. And I know the advocacy was, we want a Raising Cane's, I want it to be in Campus Town. Okay. Well, that's not a decision that anyone but Raising Cane's makes, because they have their metrics. I'm making this up. But they may say we have to have at least 25,000 cars drive by our store a day. And no, you can't drive by 10,000 times a day and count, all right? Because they can. No, I'm just kidding. The point being is, it's vehicle traffic, it's eyeballs, it's exposure. South Duff is where people who have those kind of metrics are looking for. I'm not saying that they're going to be on South Duff, or they won't be. They will or won't be on South Duff. But I know there's also a population that different stores have in terms of their criteria and whether or not they can make things work based on their individual metrics. All I can say is I have heard from reliable sources that there are a number of individuals that are looking, is there some kind of way to make that happen in the community, and it may be like a checkers game of moving things around in order for that to happen. That is information that's probably 2-3 months, old. But I was encouraged to hear that it's in the conversation. But ultimately, it comes down to a business decision. And I will say that there was a business in town that's extremely well used, on the south side of town. That I was contacted by a property owner up north saying, "Hey, they're considering up here," and I did that. I wrote a letter and I explained exactly why I thought this would be a great fit and be a real asset, to the community. It didn't happen. They have their own criteria. They know what their model is that works well. And so consequently, as much as I'd like to say could write a letter and poof, it would happen, even if I had a significant amount of power to try and make it happen, it really comes down to them saying, how can we be successful and where can we deploy our money? Now, exciting news is that we are getting an Ashley furniture store. It's going to come in just south of Target. They were moving dirt. And council did grant some financing, they didn't make any loans, but they basically provide some tax increment financing to encourage them, because they said, "Hey, we have 2 locations. We want to come to Ames, but the other one we probably will go first. We are going to come here. It's just if you can help us out a little bit with this." And council said, "Sure. We will do that. It makes sense because otherwise our residents have to drive, to Boone or down to Des Moines or Ankeny to go to a furniture store." So that's the power that council would have, is that if and frankly, it rarely is used for restaurants, because usually restaurants know what they need and that they're going to do it, they're going to move forward. But I will definitely communicate that to our city manager, who is the point of contact for those, and just say, how are we doing on Raising Cane's?
Another vote in the Raising Cane's box.
Yeah. And I frankly don't understand the phenomenon, but we hear it loud and clear, and I think that we love to see a multiple. We hear every year when we're going to get an Olive Garden too. I mean, that's just, so there are people that are very passionate about certain chains of restaurants, and I do know that our economic development, the Ames Area Regional Alliance, is working with businesses to try and bring them here, and I think that they are working pretty actively on trying to get a number of restaurant chains, and I think Raising Cane is one of them. But we'll have to see how that develops.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it was super awesome chatting with you. I want to give you the opportunity to kind of round this episode out. If there are any themes, messages, or insights you want to give to the people who have made it this far, and then of course I encourage any advertising. I know you have a campaign coming up, and then you really are just encouraged to use this platform. This last few messages to round the episode out. But really, the floor is yours to take us out.
Well, thank you. First of all, it's just been a pleasure, chatting with you and trying to just share with you what a great community, Ames is. And we are thrilled that every student who is here chooses Iowa State, to come to study at. For those that choose to come here to work, we really appreciate it. Full disclosure, when I was here, in the early 70s as a student, I didn't know that Ames hardly even existed. Back then, very few people had cars. Side-ride didn't even exist. So Dogtown, Campus Town, was primarily the destination. And then if you had a friend that had a car, maybe you got a chance to go to a mall or someplace else. Ames has so much to offer students, and we really want students to enjoy the entire experience of a community. We are trying, we have 2 meetings a year with student government. Really appreciate council's opportunity to meet and discuss. And we're always saying, what can we do to further help educate and share with students what's going on? And there are many students that do get engaged in the community. There's a lot of volunteers that go on, people working with Raising Readers, YSS, which is a youth service group, and others. So but we really do want to hear from students because we do represent you, and you are, like you said, close to half our population. And so I encourage you, if you have thoughts, Emily Bolin is as the ex officio, and would ask students to reach out to her. Ask her if you have concerns or issues or questions, she'll bring them to us. She started something called Ask the Mayor, so that's available. We are very easy to access. If you go to cityofames.org, our website, if you just search for mayor, my mugshot, my picture, my picture will come up, and you can directly email me. My mobile number is there. You can text me. You can call me. If I don't answer, don't be offended. I get a lot of calls that are prank calls, but if you leave a voicemail, I will call you back. And you can email the entire council. And we do want to provide a safe, enjoyable, amenity-filled experience. We have a great downtown, and I've often asked students, are you aware of the Octagon Art Festival, which is one of the larger art festivals that happens in Iowa every year? It just takes over the downtown, towards the end of September, where artists from all over, the Midwest come and display their creations. Ada Hayden, which is a fantastic, lake. You can kayak on it. We have it. Middle of summer, we have a triathlon. It's a triathlon where you can get certified to continue to work your way up into national competitions. The variety of parks. So it's just I have a fond place in my heart for Iowa State being my alma mater. But it's really we do want to hear, but we also understand students are busy, and sometimes by virtue of wanting to be competitive, the university has had to become more self-sufficient in order to compete for students to come. And so we understand that there's more amenities that are provided, on campus. And if you want a shameless plug, I thoroughly enjoy representing everyone in the community. If you don't graduate or you continue on, next semester, and if you're registered to vote, you are eligible to vote in the election. And the election will include 3 council members, the mayor. There'll be several members for the school board, and I believe there'll also be some state candidates on the ballot also. Maybe as we get closer to that time, if someone wants to talk further, maybe opportunities to engage in conversation. But I just want we do take every student's input seriously when we get it. It's probably the least amount of input that we do get. But if people have ideas on how we can better reach out to students and engage with them, hopefully this is one medium. And I'll close with this. I had the opportunity last year to visit with the editors from Iowa State Daily. Had a wonderful time. We met monthly for about 4 or 5 months, and just kind of share with them what goes on in the community, answered questions. And I asked them, how do you engage? How do you reach students? What are they responding to? How are they getting their news? How are they getting their information? And they said, we struggle with the same thing. Because it was TV, radio, a few newspapers, word of mouth, and now there are so many platforms, and you think as soon as you basically have conquered one or gotten a lot of people move on to something else, and then something else, and something else. And we have a full-time public information officer, and she has another staff member. We're trying to do podcasts also now. We're doing some videos, trying to post things on different social media sites. But as you probably can appreciate, what we just talked about, it's pretty hard to get into a 7-second video. Yeah. And the issues are complex. And if I'm belaboring something, it's more like I want people to understand what goes into it. But unfortunately, it's just not something that they can be grasped in a very short period of time. So if you are interested in or planning on voting, I would appreciate your support and your vote. And if you have concerns or issues, I encourage you to reach out to me. And if you just want to stop me on the street and talk, I'll do that too.
Well, John, it was super awesome having you on, and thank you so much for talking about your work.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor being with you.
Yeah.